My name is Cedric Hobbs. I'm the GUI Architect here at Big Switch. And I'm really excited to kind of give you all a preview of Multicloud Director, which we've been working on for a little while now. First of all, what is Multicloud Director? Simply put, it's a single pane of glass for your hybrid cloud, right? So if you're using BMF or BCF or both, whether it's on-prem or in the public cloud, Director will be a way to manage and get visibility into your whole set of deployments. So that said, let's dive into a little preview. What are we looking at here? We're looking at all the deployments we have here at Big Switch, our lab, our QA, our testing development environment. So there's 20 some odd controllers already loaded into Director here. And of course, the first thing you'll notice is the map, right? This is a really powerful way to see all your deployments in the cloud, right? If they're in various different locations, you can literally get a global view of your cloud deployments. By default, we show all the locations in a single color, but we can color them by status, where status is whether we're connected or not, or whether there's some authentication issue, or we can color them by product. So I want to do different colors for BCF and BMF, right? And those colors are actually customizable, so you can pick whatever you like. If we scroll down to the, let me turn that off for a second. So if we scroll down to the table view, we can see a lot of interesting details, like the list of locations. We can see links to the CLI and GUI on the individual controllers themselves. If we have user configurable tags, we can do all kinds of filtering and normal table functionality here. But we can also show a grid view, which is a more graphical representation of our controllers, right? So now we can see things like some hardware performance metrics and list of account of fabric errors and warnings in our deployments. Now, part of what we have to do is actually add a controller to Director, right? So suppose we just deployed a BMF instance in AWS, right? And in fact, I have a team that's sort of working on one right now that we want to maybe add here to Director, so I just want to show how we would do that. Pretty easy. All I need to do is enter the IP and credentials. And first step is it just connects. And once it's connected, all I have to do is configure, right? Give it a name. I'm just going to call this BMF AWS. And give it a location. And I happen to know that this particular AWS deployment is in AWS US West 2, which is in Oregon. So we can see we have all these locations already pre-populated. And then I just save. In fact, let me turn back the map. And once I save, you'll see you should see the pin fly right into that location on the map where the deployment lives, right? So adding a controller is that simple. So I also want to drill down to, Kyle mentioned, and you guys have, Kyle gave you access to our network, our Office controller, our HQ controller, and that's actually already loaded here. It's called HQ BCF. I've just named it our HQ BCF EC. So let me just click that, drill down a little bit, and go to a detail page for that controller. So again, we see some of the details about the controller and some stats, and we'll see again the links to the CLI and the GUI right here. So I'm just going to launch into the main GUI for the Office controller from here. And if we go over to the VPCs table, we'll see the VPC that Kyle invited you guys to play around in. So while we're here, I actually kind of want to just take a look at the fabric view of our desktop, of our Office controller.
Zoom in a little.
Oh, sure.
Command tab, Command plus. Yeah. Thanks. A little. Yeah.
And so here's a fabric view of our physical network, right? So we can see the spine switches. We can see the leaf switches grouped by rack, just like you might see in the data center. What I really love about this is we actually have faithful renderings of these switches, right, by model number, right? So for the different models, we actually show them in granular detail, with LEDs and everything, right? You can actually see the backs too if you want to see the PSUs and the fans. Those are all drawn faithfully as well. And if I'm going to turn off the labels
Are the fans turning?
they're not. There's no whirring going on.
Feature request.
Just turned off the labels here. Another cool thing we can do is, let me show the fronts. We can kind of show the links, right? So we actually simulate the sort of the cabling from port to port in our physical environment. These faithful renderings are just a sort of flat view of the front and back. But if we want to actually see a more 3D view, we can sort of drill down to the detail page and see the faithful rendering in all its sort of 3D splendor, which is always fun. And again, we can sort of flip around. You can see there's LEDs lit for the interfaces that are actually active, and same for the PSUs and fans in the back. So we can always flip that around, or we can tilt it if we want more of a projected view.
And you know what? I think this is really great, especially for big companies like the one I work for. I don't get to see switches.
Right. I don't, as far as I know, no one's.
I work with like Dell 4148s. I've never seen one. It's a true thing.
There you go. And now you'll never actually have to go down to the data center to look at
Who
it.
wants to?
Well, the data center is 2,000 miles away from
Right.
where I live. So.
Right. Well, even better. Right. Anyway, just wanted to take that a little diversion. But let's go back to Director real quick. I wanted to sort of demonstrate a visibility workflow. If you want to see all your physical switches across all your deployments across your hybrid cloud, right? With Director, you can just do that with one click, right? So I'm just going to click switches and see what happens. So as it churns, what's happening is Director is farming out API requests to all the controllers it knows about, and it's going to assemble the results here. And let me zoom this one up a bit too. There we go. I'm going to remove a few columns just to make it a little bit clearer here. All right, so I have a pretty rich table here with hundreds of switches across our 20-some deployments. One thing that stands out, of course, is the hardware stats, the CPU and memory utilization, and that's kind of cool. You can just sort in reverse order on that and see where all the hotspots are in your network. That's always fun. And on the right, you can actually see a list of the platforms, the actual model numbers, and the ASICs, which is interesting. And one thing that's nice about this table view is if you see a value you like in a cell, all you have to do is click this instant filter button to filter the table on that value. So now you can, if I'm looking for all my S4048 switches in my hybrid cloud, I can see them all here in a glance. And this switch name is also linked to the individual controller's switch detail page that I just showed you a minute ago with a 3D view, right? So from Director, I can get a direct link to the individual switch detail page on each controller's GUI, right? So this is our S4048 switch on one of our QA deployments. So what I wanted to demonstrate was, some of the functionality in Director. I mean, we can do visibility workflows like, aggregating things like switches or login history or something like that across all your controllers. We'll have workflows where you can actually push some common config. For example, if I want to sync up all the NTP servers for all my controllers, or even do all the switch firmware upgrades for all the switches in my deployment. That'll be something we can do in Director. And of course, the global view. I mean, I think when you pair this with the BCF and BMF GUIs, right, you get a real span of views, right? We go literally from a global view, like we saw here, a global view of your hybrid cloud, and you can drill down to the fabric view and down to the switch view and down to the port view, right? So
this whole idea of SDN controllers being federated is pretty popular. So you're talking about federating all of the controllers that Big Switch has made and bringing them together into a unified here. Not only that, you're also unifying the on-prem and the off-prem controls.
Right.
So you've created a new controller in AWS and deployed it in Oregon, wherever that is, right? And but you're also saying, I've got on-prem ones here in this office, then that's linked up. So you've just federated every SDN controller that I own, and I might own dozens, hundreds.
Yeah.
So wherever there's a fabric, whether it's data center or monitoring fabric, it's all now unified as one thing.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I just want to say that out loud because that is actually very cool.
It's really cool.
Because there's other companies out there and they still just working out how to federate their controllers and make hierarchical stacks.
Yeah.
That earlier, and they've got this problem where they've got all of these SDN controllers littered all over the place, and they have to put controllers of controllers of controllers
That was me.
to scale up the configuration stacks, and this is all done.
Yeah.
And you have to get to this if you're going to tackle the enterprise as well, right? So we're talking maybe data centers here. Maybe you only have half a dozen or a dozen of them. What happens when you have 400 or 1,000 office sites that you also have deployed a big switch fabric at? Having this single unified, fabric controller and being able to manage everything in one spot, I think really changes the game.
I mean, there's value in this for if you have five controllers or 500, right? And we anticipate this will scale pretty well, and that we'll continue to add features to it.
Yep, but it's on and off-prem.
Yeah.
So I don't have to suddenly reinvent my controller strategy to get it managing instances in the cloud as well as doing my on-prem private cloud.
Right.
That's what I like about this is that all of a sudden, and if the VPC thing, I'm still wrapping my head around the VPC thing. It takes my brain a little while to catch up. But that idea really powerful, I think. And that's a transformation thing. You'd have to bring that VPC thing in over time because you're changing the basic unit of networking, which has always been a subnet, a VLAN. And now you're telling me it's just a VPC. Well, that's a fairly big transition, and it's let's just say that if you've done a few weeks of training to come up with a certification, you might be challenged on that.
Sure. Any questions?
Yeah, I have two. So
Sure.
I work for a big telco, and I think even for multi-site deployments, we have the use case where we have tenants that are internal consumers of network resources that are scattered all over the world. This fact that Kyle mentioned, we do the stitching for you, right? It's powerful, but makes people like us a bit nervous at times because we don't get to understand how the stitching really works. Right? And probably, I'm just guessing, it works on the basis of VXLAN overlays or some other DCI technologies ran over some kind of transport. We have this requirement to stitch MPLS layer 3 VPNs into VPCs, right? So if you could do that, that would be amazing, right? So I'm not sure how the stitching really works, the one that Kyle mentioned, and apologies, I'm probably not so familiar with your product, but I think that would be really, really good. And the other thing is that the power I see here is that people probably spent, we have this split brain scenario in terms of development workforce where we have people that are very used to develop against cloud platforms and people that are very used to develop against on-prem clouds or private clouds. And for them to be able to use one single interface or API to create network resources like a CloudFormation template, say. Yeah. So people are very used to use CloudFormation to configure VPCs, and if we could do this or have a unique way of creating VPCs both on-prem and off-prem, that would be like godsend.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, right? I don't know, Kyle, did you want to talk a little more to that, or?
Can we quote you on that? That would be a godsend.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
So cool, yeah.
I have a comment and a question. So I'm responsible for our SDN practice nationally where I work for a very big VAR. And I have a lot of SDN customers today. We've been doing SDN since 2014. And the use case that has always been the #1 use case has been around security. Now, I think the bigger use case is around automation and automation orchestration. I think that's the bigger use case. But initially, it's all around security. So our earliest adopters, healthcare, retail manufacturing, and financial. So all of those, the common thread, compliance, right? So is there any component of this that kind of addresses that, or do you partner with other companies that handle the security?
Yeah,
Can we wait for the next
Yeah.
presentation?
I think that's queued
Sure.
up. Yeah.
And my comment was, I looked at your product 2 years ago, and all I can say is, wow, you guys have come so far. It's amazing.
Thanks.
So, I mean, I've seen several presentations, and I've always kind of looked at it kind of contained, right? Because I haven't seen like this federated level of access. So is there any component of this that is actually the interlinking of these sites for communication purposes? So the idea is, is this just a management sitting over the top? I can manage it all from one spot? Or is there a mechanism where I have all these data centers and I can, I'm moving workloads and I'm doing those types of things? Like where does the line end here?
So we see this, what you're seeing now, is still 6 months from release. Mm-hmm. We are working very, very hard on a couple of these things. Our view is that this will not be just a this will not be a management level system only. Already, if you look at packet handling, we support areas like from fabric to fabric, VXLAN tunneling in between fabrics. Mm-hmm. We can have an interesting debate whether that's a good idea for inter-data center use or not. You can probably tell I kind of sit on one side of that debate. Our goal was not to make something that abstracts away the WAN. WAN engineering is its own specialized discipline. But there are a couple of very, very, very interesting workflows that we see that require, hey, require us to do some really deep thinking on the packet handling and the data plane of the fabric itself in order to expose a really simple workflow on the top. And I'm not going to jinx the launch that we have coming up in December around this, but I would say stay tuned on that one because we have some interesting stuff coming there.
Yeah, I see a lot of opportunity with the idea that this kind of unifies the way we look at segments of our network. Because right now it's two very disparate things. You have your cloud and the way we manage that. We have our on-prem and the way we manage that. By now making it the same, I see opportunity just in how those two disparate sources that we put a WAN link between now interact. Again, I'm with you in the sense that I'm not sure it's a good idea necessarily just to extend like crazy, but the idea is, I'm just curious if there are other things there. It sounds like you have some thoughts, but not quite yet.
Maybe the best way to can we talk about that over the beers tonight, not while the camera?
Absolutely. Fair enough.
And we'd love to get you today.